Hey there, I'm Linda Ugolo, and welcome to The Delight in the Limelight, the show where we explore what it takes to feel confident speaking up, showing up, and sharing your work in the world. I help people overcome their fear of speaking so they can express themselves with clarity, confidence, and ease, and sometimes humor on stage, on camera, or in conversation. And if this is something you want to be better at, I've got a free tool to help. It's called the Speaker Preparation Checklist, and you can grab it at lindaugolo.com/rituals. Now, today, we're diving into something a lot of us wrestle with: how to talk about and sell our products and service without feeling like we're pushing or oversharing or being too much. My guest, Darren Mitchell, is a former sales leader turned coach, mentor, and podcast host who helps people and teams sell with confidence to become exceptional in the marketplace. Welcome, Darren.
Thanks, Linda. Great to be here.
Yeah, I had such a great time on your show, and I felt really intrigued by your process, which felt like there was a lot of resonance with my values and my beliefs. So I really wanted to have you come on. And the first thing I was thinking of wanting to ask you about is this idea of sales is the ultimate form of service. Can you unpack that for us?
Certainly can. And look, firstly, before we press record, I did apologize because we were supposed to do this a few weeks ago. And somebody who happens to live on the other side of the world, as in me, forgot to jump on. I do apologize to you and your listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I think this is just good for everyone to know that we all make these kinds of mistakes. We make scheduling mistakes. We forget to show up at times. I'm sure there's not a single person in the audience who hasn't had that mortifying experience.
Well, it is, and I make that point specifically because people want to do business with those who they know, they like, they trust, but also who they remember. But they want to remember people who are real and, dare I say, authentic. People use this term authentic all the time now, and I think it's a little bit overused. But when I think about sales and when I think about sales being the ultimate form of service, and it's something I've been using for many years now, it's at its core, selling is helping. And if you look at the origins of the word sales, it goes back many, many years, and it's all about helping. So how do I help somebody? Now, the ultimate form of service comes from the fact that if you have a product and you have a service, you have an offering, and that offering is a solution to a problem that exists in the marketplace. And if you've come across a prospective customer who does have that problem, and two key points around that: A, they want to solve the problem, and B, they need to solve the problem. Then selling being the ultimate form of service is simply, well, if I can help them understand that problem, if I can articulate that problem probably better than they can, there's a very high probability that they'll look at me and say, do you have a solution? And when that happens, I'd be doing them a disservice if I didn't share the solution to that particular problem. Now, whether they end up taking that, that's another thing. And this is where the conversation goes into whether we're going to be pushy, salesy, or whatever. Often as salespeople, we need to learn the art of disassociating from the outcome. But the art of service is, you have a problem, Linda. I have a solution, and I'm now going to give you the opportunity to have a look at that solution. And being of service to you will be helping you make a educated buying decision, not me ramming down my products and my services down your throat to the point where you cannot make a decision.
Yeah.
So it's all about helping.
So I love something that you kind of tucked inside there about not having attachment to the outcome, because that's kind of key to not feeling desperate, right?
Totally. The interesting thing about selling, and if you ask most people about this concept of sales, and I do this all the time in workshops, I'll even ask salespeople who actually loves to be sold to. And it's very rare for anybody to put their hand up and say, yeah, me, pick me. I love being in sales. I love being sold to. Vast majority of people don't. But the other question is, who likes to buy? Everybody likes to buy when they feel as if they're in control. And so as a salesperson, sometimes what we can do is we can fall into the trap of thinking, well, I've got the best product. there's also a finite number of customers. So my job is to try and get my best product into the hands of the finite number of customers as quickly as I can. And therefore, it becomes more of a pushing, convincing game versus a service game. And a salesperson who can remove themselves from the pressure of having to make a sale actually has a change of energy. And there's this vibe that then happens where the customer no longer feels as if this person is thrusting something to me, pushing something to me, trying to convince me to take something or do something that I don't want to do. And now it actually means I can lean into that conversation and lean into exploring that option. And more probability will be that they'll take that affirmative action that we want. But the problem with that, all of that is, of course, that people in sales teams have sales managers who are riding them like a bucking bull, who say, Linda, where's your numbers for this month? We've got 4 days left until the end of the financial year or the end of the month. You're behind on your number. Go sell more. Make more calls. And so that then becomes a desperation game for many people. And I'm not sure whether you've experienced this, but I certainly have. When you're talking to a salesperson who has even an inkling of desperation, you can smell and you can detect commission breath. And that is, this person's, all they're interested in is making a sale so they can make a commission, not are they making a sale to be of service to me? And there's a big difference.
Right. I like that commission breath.
You see it all the time.
It's interesting. You mentioned that nobody likes to be sold to, and yet I have definitely been on the buyer side, and I want the solution to be. So I want to buy, and I want to be convinced why I should buy sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I'm really looking for the solution, and I want to know that this person can give it to me. And sometimes I feel disappointed that someone isn't articulating their confidence that this is going to work for me.
Yes. And sometimes you might want it more than the seller wants it, because they might just be following a process. You desperately want that solution to the problem, but you might not be in a position to be completely vulnerable to say, hey, give me the next step. I want to buy this. What's the step I need to take in order to go to the next step of the process?
Mm-hmm.
And so people need to earn the right to sell. And it all comes down to relationships. And when you talk about what you do, it's all about creating presence and being comfortable and confident when you're articulating a message, whether it be in a group setting, on a stage, one-to-one. And so when you think about it, coming back to what we said before in terms of people wanting to do business with those who they know, they like, and they trust, the role of a salesperson, first and foremost, is to build a connection where there is a level of trust there, to the point where a recommendation is being made, the person who does have a problem and wants to solve that problem is more likely to lean into what that solution is. But often the salesperson doesn't recognize those triggers or doesn't listen intently for what is the potential buying signal, and therefore they keep selling. Why? Because most of the time they're focused on the features of their product, not listening to the needs of their customer.
So this is an issue with the team leadership. Is that correct? That creates, or I mean, let's say we're talking about a company, because it's a little different when it's a solo business owner who's selling their services, or you're part of the team, because part of the team, you don't have as much agency, I would think. Or do you?
In terms of agency, in terms of
in terms of how you go about sharing the product and talking about it.
Yeah, well, typically in a sales team, you'd be part of an organization that has, I guess, created their own sales process or their own methodology. Hopefully, they would have given the sales team training. But the issue, and you rightly mentioned that it's an issue for sales leadership, because my experience and one of the reasons why I'm in this space is the vast majority of sales leaders and sales managers have been put into that position because they were a great salesperson. They might have generated great results. They could have been the number one or number two salesperson in the team or in the company. And because of that, their senior managers have said, wow, Linda, you are the number one salesperson. We reckon if we give you the title of sales leader, we can now have your results replicated amongst your team. So we're going to put you in a position of sales manager. We're not going to give you any training and support, but you're going to be able to drive that number. And so it's literally the blind leading the blind. So a sales manager then becomes a super salesperson and don't necessarily teach the principles or the processes or the characteristics that enable them to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have a team that therefore starts to flounder. And when a sales leader doesn't know, I guess, the science behind selling and doesn't grasp why they've been successful, they don't know how to teach. They don't know how to coach. They don't know how to mentor. And so the team success almost happens by accident, or it doesn't happen at all. And it's very difficult for them to unpack why that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the product and it's not the sales methodology.
So you are someone who goes in sometimes to these teams and you help turn that around. What are the things that you're looking for to change?
I'm looking for teachability. I'm looking for coachability. I'm looking for people within the sales team who have a good set of values and what those values are. They don't have to be my values, but I need to understand why they're there. And I ask, one of the first questions I ask any sales leader and any salesperson within that team is, why are you a salesperson? Why did you choose? Because the answer to that question becomes very telling in terms of where their focus is going to be in any business and certainly any work that I do with them. And it's interesting, the vast majority of people turn around and say, well, I'm in sales because I can have prestige, I can have status, I can make a lot of money, I can be successful, I have empowerment. And yet when you look at what they're doing, they're not achieving any of those. Why? Because they've been stifled to go and sell a product that probably they don't believe in, because most of the time they don't believe in themselves because they've never really thought about, why am I actually doing this? What's really fascinating with this, Linda, is the salespeople who are very, very successful. And when I say successful, there's different measurements of success. Some will look at success and say the metrics, the numbers, the achievement. I look at success in a very broader way in saying, how sustainable are you? How long have you been in an industry, or how long have you been in a particular role? Do you have a reputation where people are actively calling you? That is where they are being of service. And when you ask those people why they're in sales, it's very rarely, if ever, because I can make a lot of money, because I can drive a nice car, I can live in a big house. They're in sales because they want to be of service. They believe that they are almost like on a mission to help their customers be better, help them become better at what they do, help make it easier for them to serve their customers. And when that happens, you become a person of service. You don't become a person with commission breath. And so working with these organizations, that's the first thing I look for is what are you motivated by? Why are you in this gig? Right? And then secondly, what sort of method do you use? What's your approach? And that will then determine how much work is required. And do I say how much remediation needs to be done, and whether these people need a bit of a lobotomy or not. But look, most people are pretty good people, right? At the end of the day, at their core, they want to be of service. They just don't necessarily all have the opportunity to be that because their organization, or often their one-up manager is forcing them down a path of, you need to sell this product because we need to get a number. And if we don't get a number, then we're all in the Khyber. And so it becomes desperation.
Right. And of course, a business survives through income. So it's not like those things are not part of the reality.
No. Nothing happens without a sale.
So there's like this balance or this dichotomy of, we got to make the sale, but we can't feel desperate about it, or we have to have a higher purpose.
Correct.
We have to believe in it then and be of service.
Yes.
Rather than, this is just a number and it's just kind of like a numbers game.
Totally. Now, that's an interesting one, because a lot of people will say, hey, sales is a numbers game, so go and make more calls. Go and knock on more doors. Go and send more LinkedIn requests. Go and send more emails. And that's fine, because numbers do play out and statistics are pretty valid. And interestingly, when you look at any organization, and probably individuals would fall into this category, even though the research has been done pretty much about companies, is that at any one time, there's only around about 2 to 3% of organizations that are in a buying window where they're ready to make a purchase decision immediately. And so unless you're really lucky, the vast majority of contacts, certainly on the first contact that you make with an organization, They're not going to be in that window. They're going to be part of the 97% that are not quite ready to make that purchasing decision, which means I can't go in for the jugular. I can't go in and try to flick the switch and have them buy my product, irrespective of how much I think they need it or want it. It's just not going to happen. So I have to go into a nurturing campaign. And the research points to the fact that there's a huge percentage of salespeople that give up after the first contact, after the second contact, after the third contact. But the ones that tend to make the sale are the ones that stick in the game, stay in the game, continue to add value with every contact piece. And this is the key thing. You need to add value because you need to progress the relationship and progress the opportunity. But 80% of the sales are made between the 5th and 12th plus contact.
Wow.
Now, when you hear that, it's like, okay, I've got the best product, but that says to me that there's only a small percentage of the marketplace that are going to be ready for that product at any one time. My job is to try and sift through to figure out which 3%, where are the 3%, right? Knowing that there's a very high probability that I'll be speaking to the majority of my customers that are not yet ready. But what's the impression I'm going to leave with them? How can I be of service? How can I help them and lead them to the next part of their buying process, not the next part of my sales process, to the point where I remain top of mind. So when they do get to the 3% window, the first person or the first company they're thinking about is me. That's the key.
Right. And I suppose like during this nurturing period, you're not just giving value, but you're also building relationship.
You have to. Because at the end of the day, companies don't buy from companies. People buy from people. And here's the other thing that a lot of salespeople either are ignorant to or neglect to look at, particularly in a business context. With the information that's available today, whether it be LinkedIn, Facebook, any social media or social or digital presence, we all have a digital footprint. And if you represent an organization, then your customers are doing research on that organization, and they're probably doing research on you before they meet you. Now, another statistic that is fascinating to me, and it's probably ramped up really in the last 4 or 5 years, is that around 85% of organizations have already made an indicative choice on their preferred supplier before they actually meet that supplier. And this is really important because what impression are we creating out there in the marketplace? What is your brand as a company, but what is your brand as an individual? Because people are going to be watching and people are going to be making decisions without having spoken to you. And if they don't get a good vibe, if they think, well, they're talking a good game out in the marketplace, but I'm seeing evidence perhaps that might be in contradiction to what I'm seeing, what I'm reading, what I'm hearing, then I'm not quite sure that you're the type of organization that I want to do business with, because I'm not quite sure that I can trust you. So we talked before about building a connection. Yes, you've got to build relationships, but they have to be relationships built on a fabric of trust. And when you think about your character, are you a person of character? Are you a company of character? Do you live the values of your organization so that you've got nothing to hide? Now, there'll be people out there and there'll be companies out there that don't vibe with you and don't resonate with you. And that's perfectly okay. Guess what? They're not your customer. So don't try to retrofit everybody and say, man, come and do business with me. Because, and I don't want to sound flippant about this, you just got to have an attitude, well, I don't care.
Yes. And also knowing that we're not for everyone.
Yes.
Not everyone is for us, and that we have to let it be okay, because as buyers ourselves, we know that we're not going to buy from just anyone.
No.
So we have to allow that for ourselves also. I say this to my clients and students all the time, that you don't want everyone watching your video. You don't want everyone coming into your business, because you want people who are aligned with you.
Totally.
And you don't need everybody to like what you're about.
No.
You know, you just want the people to appreciate and like and want to get more of you, who are the ones that are needing you.
Totally. And what you want to do is where there's a connection or a possible connection out there in the marketplace, and that's where they'll read stuff from you, they'll see videos. In the case of what we're doing here, they might listen to a podcast and say, oh, I really like the way that Linda articulates a message. There's something about Linda that I can't quite put my finger on, but I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that level of curiosity might lead that person to take the next step or a micro step, and that could be they might subscribe to your newsletter. They might buy your book. They might listen to other podcasts. They might go and watch some videos that you've done. And that's an opportunity for us to continue to build credibility in the marketplace and build a connection, even though we haven't yet met that person.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that person is starting to get to know you. And when that happens, they're starting to get some rememberability. So at some point, when they're closer to that window where they would like to make a purchasing decision, because they've done some research, because they now feel as if they know you, this is the key thing. When they get the opportunity to speak with you, that's the moment of truth. Because at the moment of truth, they're going to be making a determination. Is what I've seen and heard of Linda up until this point now going to be matched by the real Linda who's now in front of me? And this is the thing. This is where the ultimate form of service comes in, because if you are real, if you are authentic, if you're not pretending to be in character, that person should get this feeling of, oh my God, you're exactly like on your videos. You're exactly like on the podcast. And it's almost like, excuse the French, but no shite Sherlock. Really? And then that connection now gets even more deepened. And that then leads to the opportunity to now have a conversation where I might be of service because you've now got a problem. You've now taken the step to investigate. My role now is to help you over the threshold to hopefully make a decision that's going to serve you, not a decision that's going to serve me.
Yeah. Let's get into the mindset a little bit. I love, we talk about this piece of being service, of not having, a sense of desperation or too much attachment to the outcome. We've also spoken about, being your authentic self, being, putting yourself out places so people can get to know you.
Yeah.
What else do you think contributes on the inside for somebody to feel like they're not breaking into a cold sweat, that they can relax into themselves? Like, what are some other ways that people who are selling need to be framing what they're doing? Yeah. Oh yeah. We also talked about, believing in the product, of course.
Yeah. I mean, you got to believe in the product. You got to, and that goes without saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we understand that people buy from people, and there might be a level of anxiety, there might be a level of nervousness. And what happens inside often will manifest on what people see on the outside. So you see that, and you'll see this in the work that you do with people wanting to learn how to speak in front of small groups, large groups, medium-sized groups. They might be very anxious, very nervous. They'll have the sweaty palms, the sweaty underarms, all the nervousness and stuff like that. And yet when they get up and when they speak, they appear from others to be rather calm or present a completely different view or vibe than perhaps what's going on inside. So in business, just as in sales and probably just as in life, the success is an inside game. So what's happening up here? So what's the thought process? Now, whether that be mindfulness, whether that be meditation or whatever works for you, whether that be mantras, it's really important to be really in control of your mindset. And I often say to salespeople and leaders, are you aware of your mindset and are you aware of your attitude when you wake up in the morning? And are you looking at the day being full of opportunity, or are you looking at the day thinking, my God, I've got to have that conversation with that particular customer. It's not going to be great. And that's therefore leading to how you're thinking, which will now lead to how you then behave, which will ultimately lead to how you get a result, which may not be the one you want. So it's about working on the inside and just, it's the preparation. And I'll say to people all the time, how quickly can you change your mindset? And it's literally as quickly as clicking your fingers. But what most people don't recognize is they've got control over their mindset. Many people have the external locus of control where they give power to the things that are happening. My God, my alarm didn't go off this morning. Oh my God, the dog was barking all night, or I got cut off in traffic. And they give power to that, which now affects how they're thinking And that has a flow-on effect to how they converse with people. And that may not be having them at their best. We always need to think about how we're going to be our best. So what's the internal locus of the control that I have? What am I thinking about? What am I controlling? What am I controlling in terms of what my influence is going to be?
And how do you suggest that people want, like, what are some examples of what they want to be focusing their mind on?
Well, it starts with outcome, and people would have heard this, start with the end in mind. And it's as simple as when something happens, and I often use the case of, and salespeople get this all the time, particularly if on the road, they'll be in traffic. They'll get cut off in traffic, right? And when people get cut off in traffic, the classic example is, well, what happens when you do get cut off? Does anybody really maintain their Zen state and say, after you, my friend? Obviously, you're in a much better position than me, or you're in much more of a hurry than I am. No. Most people, when they get cut off in traffic or something happens they don't expect, they react to it. And the reaction could be tooting the horn, excuse the French, giving the two-finger salute, yelling, screaming, and that just has an effect on people's mindset and attitude. So understand this. We have the ability to control our responses to everything and anything that happens to us. Now, that's not in any way, shape, or form minimizing the fact that things do happen, and sometimes things happen to people that I wouldn't have wished it upon my worst enemies. But the power of the human mind is whatever happens to us, I have a choice in terms of how I respond to that. And in order to choose my response, I have to be really clear on what is the ultimate outcome that I want. So, for example, if I have to have a meeting with a client, or I might be in the last stages of a sales process, I might be having to do a big pitch to a board of directors, and that's at 3:00 in the afternoon. And I wake up in the morning and I feel horrendous. I haven't had a good sleep. I'm filled with anxiety. I start to drive in towards where I've got to go. My car breaks down. I get a flat tire. I get cut off in traffic. I'm not going to be at my best because stuff happens. But what do I have control over? I have control over, all right, I need to be at my best. I want to control what is the outcome, or at least give myself the opportunity of achieving that outcome. In order for me to do that, what's the best response that I can put in to this particular situation? And in order to have that response, what do I need to be telling myself in order to help me with that response, which, by the way, will push me closer to the possibility of getting that outcome versus being at the mercy of the events and having the outcome almost be created because of the mercy of the events and my reaction. It's just being in control. Now, people might say, oh, you're saying you fake it until you make it. So I'm not saying that. You don't fake it, because faking it is not real. What I'm saying is we can act as if we have a mindset. If you use a scale of 1 to 10, and I use this all the time, you can act as if you're at a 10. But it starts with asking a very important question: where am I right now? So when I wake up in the morning, my mindset, I'm not really aware of it because I'm still in this sleepy stupor. So I've got no idea. How do you feel? Oh, no, don't feel great. But where's your mindset on a scale of 1 to 10? Now, if the number is 5, the next question is to ask, okay, is that 5? Is that going to enable me to be functional today to give myself every opportunity of getting the outcome? If it is, awesome. Go forth. Do what you need to do. If it's not, the question is, how do I need to get it to a 6, a 7, an 8? It may not need to get to a 10, but I need to get it to another number so that I give myself the opportunity to be more functional.
Yeah.
And that is an act of, well, how do I need to act like that? Yeah. And then I'll say, okay, if you were at an 8, because remember a time when you were at an 8, a 9, or a 10, and it could be an event that happened. It could be something that happened with your partner. It could be an anniversary, a wedding. It could be a great sale you made. It could be a recognition you got. Go back to that time in your head, and guess what? When you look at that, when you visualize that, you'll start to use all of your senses. Guess what happens to your mindset as soon as you put yourself into that situation? Again, it goes up.
Yeah.
And that's when you're ready to now pull the trigger.
Right. That's great. You know, it's funny because I have on my desk this card that says, what would make this moment a 10? I keep that in front of me. It's one of my mantras, because I totally believe that the most important thing is to keep our vibration high.
Totally.
And what you're describing, I work in a slightly different language, but very similar. I talk about mental rehearsal, that we're always mentally rehearsing something? Are we
Yes.
mentally rehearsing what we don't want and what we're dreading? Or are we imagining the best of what could be? So I encourage people to guide themselves through, how do they want the meeting to feel? How do they want to feel in the meeting? How do they want to see themselves speaking and communicating and expressing themselves? And as we mentally rehearse how this experience is going to go for us, we are kind of pre-paving that to happen,
Totally.
because we've already have set the wheel in motion. And
100%.
it's interesting. The very first times I ever used this idea of mental rehearsal this way was always in meetings that I was dreading. And
Mm-hmm.
every time I took the time to imagine these things, and then I'd also imagine how I felt afterwards and how we kind of left each other and, what was said, I always felt those meetings went so much better than
Yeah,
when I forgot to do this kind of preparation.
that's it. And I guarantee you also, Linda, that in those meetings, you would have disassociated from any pressure of having to get a perfect outcome. You would have said, and we hear this all the time, just trust the process. And salespeople now use it. Sporting organizations use it. Elite coaches in sporting teams use it. If we just trust the process, the outcome will take care of itself, which is if you do all of that preparation, if you put yourself in the best vibration for when you are in that particular meeting, in that particular environment, where you can be of best service and understand that not everybody is going to be a buyer at this particular moment, and what the outcome will be, will be the outcome. More times than not, you'll be amazed at what you end up achieving.
Yeah. So I have a question that I know every person deals with on some level.
Yeah.
What do you do when you lose a sale that you either thought you had, or a customer cancels that funded was the bread and butter of your whole business?
Yeah.
How do you kind of get back?
First of all, you've got to recognize that it's not nice. Nobody likes to be rejected. The first thing to try to resist doing is to blame, or to ask. Certainly, you want to ask the question why, but you don't want to ask the question why from a judgmental point of view. So why do you not do this? You told me this, and it's all your blame. Stephen Covey said many years ago, "Seek to understand before being understood." So ask questions, because there may be some things that were gaps in your selling process. There might be some gaps in your discovery process that may have created a little bit of doubt in the minds of the customer. And if that's the case, then you want to be in a position to get that sort of information so that you can put in some strategies to hopefully minimize that opportunity of happening in the future. But also it might be that the customer just wasn't ready, and the customer just decided that, you know what, I don't have a reason, I just don't want to do it anymore. And the thing with that is you just have to accept that and move on. Now, it's easy for me to say, hey, move on, when you've got a situation where the biggest sale of your entire career, you've been working for months, if not years, to get this, and all of a sudden it doesn't work. That is a big deal, right? And we've got to recognize that. But I keep remembering this thing, and I've been a follower of Les Brown for many, many years. And for those that don't know, Les Brown is obviously a African-American man. He was a very, very funny man, but he's a phenomenal public speaker. And his story is amazing. And he always used to say that if you get knocked down, make sure you land on your back. Because if you land on your back, you can look up. And if you can look up, you can get up. And if you can get up, you can get going. So get going, right? So don't wallow on it. By all means, do the review. Figure out what worked and what didn't work. Take that and move forward. And the key thing is move forward, because everybody in sales knows that, and this comes back to the conversation about it being a numbers game. Just understand that not every customer is going to be a customer, but every customer is a person who you have the opportunity, or an organization where you have the opportunity to create a relationship, to create a connection, to create an impression. And the law of reciprocity will say that if you are being a person of service, and if you are giving without any expectation of anything in return, you will leave an impression upon that person or that organization, where they will now search for opportunities to reciprocate that, but it may not come back directly to them. And I've lost count of the number of times that I've got an opportunity that's come through via a third party where I least expect it, but there was a connection of a connection of a connection that I was of service to, didn't end up being a customer, but ended up getting a customer 2 or 3 people removed. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like needing to trust the universe. Like if you feel like you're doing the right thing, your heart's in the right place, you're being of service, you are making connections, that it's going to come around and move. You're going to be kind of brought along.
Totally. Now,
and as I also appreciate what you said earlier, that yes, there may be elements that skill levels that need to be refined.
totally.
So it's kind of like, if it's not yet working, what else may be missing? Let's take a look at this. And I guess it's kind of like allowing ourselves, even when we think of ourselves as already being competent in something, to still be humble and have a beginner mindset.
Totally.
To feel like we can be lifelong learners. We can always get better at something.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's one, as you were talking there was one point or one qualification that I'd like to put in this concept around service. Because people listening to this might be thinking, oh, I just have to be a really nice person, be of service, and I'll have customers falling over me to do business with me. And I said, well, okay, that'd be great. But no, that's not necessarily the case. So just understand, fundamentally, we are here to sell a service. We are here to sell a product. We need to be proud of that. And we need to own the fact that I'm in sales. I'm here to sell you. That's my job, right? Now, the service part is, okay, we may not be necessarily in the right phase now of your buying cycle, but my job is to try and identify that and qualify you out, not necessarily qualify you in. Now, if I recognize that I've qualified you in and you, for whatever reason, are not wanting to do anything, being of service is not to say, oh, that's okay, Linda. When you're ready, give me a call. That might work in some circumstances. That might be work after going through a process. But being of service is I've got to challenge you on that. And I'm going to challenge you not to say, hey, why don't you want my product? I'm going to challenge you on, so you've just told me this is the problem for you. You just told me this is something you need to solve and this is something you want to solve. Can you just help me understand, if you don't solve this, what are the consequences? Because some people and some organizations will be reticent to make a decision. They want to, and it's because it might be a big investment or it's a completely out of their comfort zone sort of decision that is difficult. So their natural tendency is to procrastinate, to delay, to say, I'll think about it. So there'll be objections. And sometimes the objection is not going to be about your product. It'll be about them not being comfortable yet to make a decision. My role, if being of service, is to challenge them and help them arrive at a less uncomfortable decision so that they can make what is ultimately going to be the best decision for them and their business, because that's what I believe it to be, as long as they've done all the qualification. So what I want to let people know is sometimes you're going to have a hard conversation, and sometimes you're going to help people handle their own objections so that you can pave the way for them to make what ultimately will be an educated buying decision that is going to serve them.
Right.
So be proud of being in sales, but also be prepared to have what can sometimes be a challenging or difficult conversation, because you might get some resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And how to handle that with good grace is really important. And always remember that I'm here to help you. I'm not here to sell you, because the other thing we haven't spoken about is another one of my key philosophies is the sale actually doesn't start until after the sale is made. And this is really important for organizations which have a product that ultimately you want to build some lifetime value with a customer, not just an individual transaction. Now, take a retail store, for example. Right? If you look at and I don't know what sort of demographic work they do and customer psychology work they do. A lot of people in retail stores are given very minimal training. And so what they're looking for is when a customer comes in, they go up to them and say, can I help you? And most people say no. The role of that salesperson is to help and sometimes entice that customer that walks in to buy a product when they walk out. So it's almost like you've got a live customer, close. if you recognize that the sale doesn't start up until after the sale is made, then you build a relationship with that person. When they make the transaction, the moment of truth now starts to happen. What are you going to do post that sale? Are you going to ask for not so much for a referral on the transaction line, but if they buy a big screen TV, you're going to have their details, right? Are you going to make a phone call 2 weeks after that TV has been delivered just to check in to say, hey, this is Darren from the local retail store. You bought a 55-inch TV 2 weeks ago. I thought I'd just check in to see how it's going. Are you happy with the purchase? That little thing, it starts to build a little connection because I wouldn't say it's unwanted. It's unexpected. And when that happens, I think, wow, why is that person ringing me? That's interesting. That's nice. That's different. I now start to be memorable. Now, if you can build it to the point where you've got information where maybe, and this is a ridiculous example because you're probably not going to do this for a TV purchase, but you'll do it for cars, you'll do it for houses, etc. When there's anniversaries, when there's information about an individual that you've gathered through the sales process, sending them a card on their birthday or give them the call when their football team wins and say, hey, that was a great game. I hope you enjoyed it. Whatever the case might be, is little bits of memorability that when they have people within their environment who might be in the market for that similar product, they're going to say, oh, go and talk to Darren because he gave me a great deal.
And he's a nice guy.
Well, and they're not necessarily going to say that, but there's this transfer of trust that now starts to happen where that person who's now going to call me is almost like a warm lead because that person who had the experience with me is now giving that person something of them. Hey, go and talk to this person because he'll look after you. Yeah. And so the cycle continues. So this is a thing that a lot of sales organizations don't focus on. It's the after sales sale.
Yes.
If you want to have more and more sales, then God's sake, look after your customer after they've made a sale. Please.
Yeah, that's great. Well, this has been wonderful. And I feel like even though I personally don't work inside a company, a lot of my listeners don't work inside a company. I feel like so many things that you spoke about are also relevant to, solo business owners. So 100%. I think you do. Now, how if people wanted to learn more about you, they want to learn more about sales because you've got a podcast. Can you tell us about those things that you offer?
Thanks, Linda. So the best place to get me is, LinkedIn is where I'm most active. So either look up Sales Leadership Coach or put my name in, Darren Mitchell. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Would love to have a conversation there. Exceptionalsalesleader.com is the website, and on there and also on LinkedIn, you'll see access to my podcast, which is the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, of which you were a wonderful guest back in March. We had a great conversation about creating presence and developing presence in what we do to try and increase our influence. So they're the best places to get access to me.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Darren. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate all of you listeners for coming on. And be sure to check out the other episodes of Delight in the Limelight to learn about how you can grow your speaking confidence in all the areas of your work and life. Have a good one.